Bram Stoker was born in Dublin, Ireland in 1847. He had 4 brothers and 2 sisters. His father worked in a government office. Bram was often sick as a child. While he lay in bed, his mother helped pass the time by telling him Irish legends about fairies and banshees and other strange things. He also read many books from his father's library. When he grew up, Bram enrolled in Dublin's Trinity College. He made up for his sickly youth by becoming a champion athlete. He played soccer and broke records in track. After he graduated, Stoker took a government job for a while. He was 6 feet tall and had a big red beard. He loved to see plays and later became a theater critic. He went to all the plays that were put on in Dublin. In one of them, he saw an actor named Henry Irving playing in Shakespeare's Hamlet. He and Irving became friends. Irving hired Bram to run a theater for him and to help manage his acting career. Meanwhile, Stoker married and had one son, Noel. He wrote a book of weird tales for children called Under the Sunset. Bram traveled all over the world with Henry Irving, including America. He met several American presidents and other famous people. He also became a lawyer. Around 1890, he wrote his first novel. Bram had read a story about vampires, and it impressed him very much. He spent a long time reading the folklore about these blood-sucking creatures. Dracula was published in 1897 when Bram was almost 50. It became his most famous work. In all, Bram Stoker wrote 18 books, 4 of them novels of the supernatural. He died in 1912 at the age of 64. Chapter 1. Welcome to Transylvania! What a long way this is from England, Jonathan Harker thought as he looked over the old hotel he had been given a room in. The old woman who kept the place looked nearly as ancient herself. "Here is a letter for you, young man," she said, handing Jonathan an envelope. He opened it quickly, knowing it could come from only one person, the very one who had brought him here on this strange journey. Jonathan read the few lines it contained. "My friend, welcome to Transylvania. Tomorrow take the coach to the Bargo Pass. My carriage will meet you and bring you to me, your friend Dracula." Jonathan was glad to read the message. It meant his long journey was almost over. He had traveled from England all the way across Europe, over mountains, across rivers, and through deep, dark forests. Transylvania was one of the wildest parts of the continent. In fact, he couldn't find the castle of his host, Count Dracula, on any map. He was looking forward to meeting the Count and asking him about some of the strange sights he'd seen along the way. The people here were descendants of the Huns and the Turks. The men wore their hair long and had thick black mustaches. The hills were steep and wild. Jonathan made sure he noted everything in his journal so that he would be able to describe all the marvelous sights to his fiancée, Mina, when he returned. Jonathan was a young lawyer. He had come all this way to meet with Count Dracula, who had purchased a house in London sight unseen. When he asked the landlord of the hotel and the old woman, his wife, about the Count, they both crossed themselves and refused to say a word. Jonathan thought this odd. He found it even more disturbing when the old woman said to him, "Must you go, young gentleman? Oh, must you go?" Jonathan asked her what she meant. "Tonight is the feast of St. George. At midnight all evil things in the world have power. Do you realize where it is you are going?" she asked. She fell down on her knees and begged him not to make the trip. Finally, she put a rosary and a crucifix around his neck and told him to wear it. "For your mother's sake," she said. The landlady talked to the driver of the coach. Jonathan looked for the words they used in a dictionary. It made him uneasy to realize they were talking of devils and witches and vampires. He made a note to ask Count Dracula about all these local superstitions. The coach carried its passengers out into the wild countryside through dark pine woods. The road was rugged, yet the driver whipped the horses to go faster and faster. They climbed far into the mountains, the coach rocking on its leather springs like a boat at sea. The Bargo Pass was a gap where the road went through the mountains and down the other side. It was surrounded by deep, thick woods. Jonathan got out of the coach. He felt himself trembling and tried to shake the uneasy feeling. A carriage suddenly appeared, drawn by 4 black horses and driven by a tall man in a huge black hat, his face hidden in shadow. He held out a hand to help Jonathan into the carriage. His grip was like steel. All Jonathan could see of his face was 2 gleaming eyes and sharp white teeth. The coach and its other passengers continued on, leaving Jonathan alone in the carriage with its strange driver. Suddenly he felt very cold, a strange, lonely feeling. "The night is cold," the driver said. "My master the Count asked me to take good care of you. Here is a rug to keep you warm. Under the seat you will find some plum brandy." Somewhere in the distance a dog howled. Then farther off another answered. A minute later another, a sharper howl, echoed through the mountains. A wolf. The horses reared up and plunged. Jonathan was so scared he almost jumped from the carriage. The carriage went on into the night. It passed through a tunnel of dark trees. The wind began to moan and groan bitter cold. Snow was falling. The howling of the wolves closed in on all sides, but the driver didn't seem worried by them. Several times the driver stopped the carriage and ran off toward mysterious blue flames that burned in the woods. Jonathan had to rub his eyes. He could see the flames shining right through the body of the driver, as if it were made of glass. The carriage stopped again, and the driver wandered far into the darkness. Jonathan waited nervously for him to return. Then the horses started to tremble and screech with fright. "What could the matter be?" Jonathan asked himself. "I don't hear any wolves howling now." He looked out into the darkness. When the moon came out from behind a cloud, Jonathan could see that the wolves were all around the carriage. The moonlight showed their white teeth and loose red tongues and shaggy hair. Their silence was worse than their howling. Jonathan, all alone in the dark, was so terrified that he couldn't move. Suddenly they all began to howl, as if something had touched them and set them off. The horses jumped and reared and rolled their eyes. Jonathan beat on the side of the carriage to scare the terrible beasts away. The wolves just came closer.